Hi, welcome back to SouFLoTV again, everybody. It is your host with the most. I've been wanting to do this video for quite some time now, but for those who've been on SouFLoTV for a while, you know that I have followed this Vybz Kartel trial, case, appeal, all that to where it's at right now over at the Privy Council, waiting on a decision, and I've followed it from the beginning all the way till now. We never faltered, we never gave up. We don't listen to hearsay, and we don't argue like dunce people. We argue facts pertaining to the case, right? So if you really want to know, pay attention. This video is about 3 or 4 major mistakes that were made on the part of law enforcement and prosecution and the judges, or the judge, in the Vybz Kartel trial that ended up sending Vybz Kartel and the rest of the guys, Sean Stomp, Kahira Jones, Andre St. John, to prison for that long period of time that they got when they should have never been there in the first place. Now check this out. If this is the video where you think you're going to come and leave your comments, oh, it's because it's your favorite artist, please don't. Because there's no artist in the world that I like so much that they could commit murder and there would be proof there that they did it, and I would still be, oh, he's innocent. No. Okay? I stand firm on what I believe in, and I am absolutely convinced that this right here was a big setup. Let me give you an example before I even start, and I'm going to be very precise. Take a look at the Klansman One Don Gang trial right now, as it sits right now. That's all I'm going to say, right? In Vybz Kartel case, I think that they were in a rush to get a conviction, and they wanted to make sure that they sunk him. Them did want to sink him in. And they probably could have done so had they not done all the extra things that they did. But they did way too many extra things to try to secure a conviction. And yes, they got a conviction, but the conviction was dirty. It wasn't under the right rules and laws and regulations. The man was violated along with everybody else that got time with him. So, here's a perfect understanding now. The first one they did was they withheld evidence that was used to prosecute him from his defense team. What evidence am I talking about? They withheld the phone evidence that was later vetted by a specialist and found to be heavily tampered with by a forensics expert. His constitutional right was violated here. And a judge at the Privy Council who's going to look at this cannot look past this. Listen to what I just said. In the Jamaica's constitution, it says that if me or you or any one of us are arrested and we are accused of something, then we have a right to an attorney. If we don't have money to get an attorney, they will give us an attorney. They give you an attorney because we are not trained to understand certain law jargon, which is law language, and how the law operates inside out. So, although we might want to go up there and defend ourselves, we might end up putting ourselves in more problems than to actually defend ourselves. So to give you a fair trial under the law, you are appointed an attorney. Part of that constitution also says, whatever evidence is going to be used against you or I or anybody else, Vybz Kartel or anybody else, whatever evidence they have that they're going to use against you to prosecute you, to try to send you to prison with that evidence must also be made available to your defense team that is going to try to defend you. That way, your defense team can mount a proper defense and be prepared for what is going to be thrown their way in the court of law once they take it to court and we start fighting in the courtroom. That phone evidence in Vybz Kartel case was held on to by the defense for years. Let's not forget, it wasn't until Isaac Buchanan came on the scene that phone evidence was finally turned over to Vybz Kartel's defense team. And it wasn't turned over as in given to them. It was turned over as in they were now allowed to bring in an independent forensics expert who was flown into the country, an independent party who was flown into the country to examine that evidence. And guess what was found? On top of the fact that his constitutional right was already violated because they held on to evidence they should have shared with his defense team. On top of that fact, the forensics expert also found that evidence, that piece of evidence, was tampered with heavily. Y'all walking with me? That's the first one. And that's just the first one. I want to pay attention, man, because I told y'all before that this should have never happened. But I don't know what Kartel did to them, but we already know what it is. You know, the influence and the power and the braggadocio. You know, you already know how Kartel is. Him not bow down for people and these things. And they wanted to show him like who run the place and who's the man. And he wanted to show them. So when you buck the system buck back. But it was wrong. The second mistake that they made. Tampered evidence. Again, the second mistake that they made was made on the part of the actual judge now. The judge that overseen or oversaw Kartel's case and handed down his sentence made a big mistake. Here's how. That judge allowed tampered evidence to be admitted into the trial. How did he do that? Again, Vybz Kartel's phone. When he was arrested, his phone was taken. By law, when a police officer arrests you, a police officer takes whatever is on you and what they can find. And if it is supposed to be used as evidence, it is signed into the evidence room. It is marked, dated, signed into the evidence room. That particular instrument is no longer allowed to be out in public willy-nilly. You can't go into the evidence room, take out the gun that John Doe got arrested with, and they say, yes, we catch him. We even catch him with the murder weapon in his hand. And then you as a police officer take that gun out, carry the gun home with you, and say, boy, I carry the gun for me for protection, you know. And then the next day you come and put the gun back in the evidence room. That piece of evidence should no longer be admitted as evidence to be used against in the trial. In Vybz Kartel's particular case, I still ask this question to this day. Where is the officer who took the phone out of the evidence room? Kartel was a star boy, right? Kartel was a star boy. Enough people mad because I think him run through enough man, woman. Let's not get that twisted. He was a star boy. Enough man did want to get him still. As in see him sink, see him go down. Not to mention the elites couldn't stand him. However, let's talk about this part. That piece of evidence, You know, you have girls, you're rich and wealthy and famous, right? So girls send you stuff. Who for girl did Depan Cartel cell phone giving head, and whose girl was on there with their pum pum skin out and them two breast them, and they're sending body parts to him, and him a take him own pictures of all his deeds and all this. Alright. If you remember when Vybz Kartel got arrested, a series of photos were released to the public. That same police officer admitted that he took the phone from the evidence room, brought the phone back with him, and I think he said that the excuse was his minutes did done on him phone, or him credit did done on his phone, and he needed a phone, so him take the phone there. But he didn't keep the phone. He brought the phone back to the evidence room. He admitted that. A Jamaica constabulary force officer took that phone and admitted to taking the phone from the evidence room and admitted to putting the phone back in the evidence room the next day. So my question is, one, where is he today? What kind of reprimand or what kind of punishment or what kind of disciplinary actions were taken against him? And two, those series of photos that were released to the public from Kartel's private phone, who were they released by? Because see, around that time, the phone would have been in that officer's possession. Walk with me. So if the officer goes back to court, stands before the judge, and says to the judge, yes, judge, I admit I did take it out, but listen, I didn't do anything with it, judge. I just made one phone call, and I brought it back the next day. Someone should be asking him, and this proves that he is lying, because he did more than just one phone call and brought it back the next day. All those pictures that were released to the public were done so in the time frame that that police officer had that phone, which was tampered evidence at that point, heavily tampered, which was returned. And the judge still looked at it and said, admit it into the court proceedings. You see, if you compare that to what is going on right now in the Klansman Wandan trial, this is the kind of judge that Chief Justice Brian Sykes is not. This is why I said, if Chief Justice Brian Sykes had oversaw or overseen the Vybz Kartel case proceedings, Kartel wouldn't be in prison. But either that judge before was paid to be how he was, or had an alignment with somebody and was instructed to do certain things, like admit that tampered evidence into court and use it to convict, or to be a part of what was used to convict Vybz Kartel and the others. Right? That's the second one. Here's the third one. The burden of proof in a court is not on the person that is accused. The burden of proof is on the accuser, which is the prosecution. So when they are going to prosecute you, they come up with how you did what you did. And this is how they are going to prove to the judge. They must now prove to the judge how you did what they said you did. Unless them get a full out confession. And we know Vybz Kartel and all the others involved have maintained their innocence in this particular case all these years. So, the story was that Lizard was taken into this house and he was beaten with pickaxe stick and he was chopped up into pieces. Listen, you know. Dismembered, beaten with a pickaxe stick and dismembered. If an individual is taken into a particular house, beaten with a pickaxe stick and dismembered, this is what the prosecution said, and dismembered, there would be some form of trace of DNA evidence somewhere in that property, right? Did you notice how quickly they demolished the property where they claimed that this brutal killing took place. No forensic specialist went into this place. No independent forensic specialist had an opportunity to go into this place. I'm watching documentaries in the US, and 20 years later, a trailer home in which a young lady was killed 20 years ago, they were able to find one speck of crystallized blood underneath a carpet after the man who killed her there bleached down the place and everything else. And they took that speck of blood, and the fact that he said she was never inside of that trailer, and that speck of blood led them to the theory that the prosecution had against him. He was a sex offender from before. He lived pretty close to where she was living. They suspected that he kidnapped her, took her into his trailer, raped and murdered her there. They couldn't prove that she was actually in the trailer until 20 years later, DNA evidence came around, and they went back into that trailer, and with some kind of lights that they use and all this other stuff, they were able to still find DNA evidence that linked him to that young girl being in that trailer. With that said, when they confronted him with it, he gave a full confession 20 years later. So I'm saying to you, why did they demolish the house that they claim Lizard was brutally murdered in? And the fashion in which they claim it, there would be blood everywhere. It is their duty to prove that what they said happened, happened where they said it happened at. So why demolish the house? Because Kartel already said from day one, we are going to appeal this to the highest courts. So they knew the appeal was coming. So why demolish the building? Because if anything, that building should still be sitting there to prove that this is where it happened. And we're going to put a team of independent forensic psychologists in here, scientists in here, to bring proof. Burden of proof is on the prosecution, and they failed to prove that what they claim happened to Lizard actually happened. Let's not forget, this is side chatter now, right? There was a juror who was found to be on the Vybz Kartel trial jury, whose husband was a ranking law enforcement official that worked in the same building where the case was being tried, that was involved in the case itself. Conflict of interest much? That's another one. Let's not forget again that metadata has shown that the location at the time of messages in question was created way before. There was a message in there that says something about Lizzie. Sean Storm has a daughter who them call Lizzie. The prosecution lined that up and said, no, you know, did I talk about Lizard and I call him Lizzie. Sean Storm's daughter's birthday was coming around. He was communicating with Kartel and asked if he did get the thing them for Lizzie. Was talking about stuff to go get her birthday party done, right? They said, the prosecution said, no, they was talking about Lizard. There was nothing in that message that said we kill him or, you know, anything like that. Even the message that said about chop up fine, that message, metadata shows, was created way before. So either Vybz Kartel was a person that saw the future and prepared that and prepared that message way before the said incident took place, but metadata has shown that that message itself was created way before the time of which the prosecution is claiming that they took the life of Lizard. This is metadata from forensic experts. This is stuff that we cannot argue with. So, with that being said, now you know the 3 major blunders and also the other stuff that put Vybz Kartel where he is at for all the time they have given him. And I'm still saying free Vybz Kartel, and I'm still saying that at Privy Council, unless the Privy Council is ran by some Jamaican who have interest to keep him where he's at, then I'm confident that this will be overturned. There were too many violations in this. And on that note, he will be walking. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about this one, and I'll catch you on the next video. It's SouFLoTV. I'm out. Peace.